Bill to the House.
Mr Speaker.
Order. I understand the next call is a split call. Sue Maroney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, what a shambles. What an absolute shambles. And here it is, with friends like this, like these, who needs enemies, quite frankly, because the poor old farmers have been paying through the nose because of that government's ineptitude. That government's complete ineptitude, not once, not twice, but 3 times getting this wrong. And it's just a simple thing. It's just a simple matter of deciding what road user charge applies to tractors, for goodness sake. It ain't rocket science, Mr Bridges. It ain't rocket science, Mr Bridges. It's just quite simple. But that minister, everything he touches seems to turn to, well, I can't say that word even at 5 to 12 on a Wednesday night, but we all know what it is that everything turns to when Simon Bridges gets his hands on it. And here we go again. Because turns to dust, that's what I'll say, it turns to dust. But look, this is a long line in how road user charges and petrol taxes and those types of things are being completely misused by this government. Because it's not that long ago, in urgency, and I object, by the way, Mr Speaker, to urgency being used to fix up that minister's messes again, because we seem to be in urgency quite a lot fixing up Simon Bridges' messes. But here we go again. But not long ago, we were in urgency, Mr Speaker, and we were passing petrol taxes through, increased petrol taxes through, 3 cents for every year for the next 3 years. That's the increase in petrol tax, and that was done under urgency as well. Why was that done? That was done so that that government can pretend that it's got to a surplus in the budget next year. Every time New Zealanders pull up at the service station, fill up the car or the tractor or whatever it might be that they're filling up, they need to remember, every single New Zealander needs to remember, they are paying through the petrol pump, through the nose, for that government's promised surplus. Mr Speaker, point of order.
Point of order, Sue Maroney.
Mr Speaker, there was a ruling by the Speaker at question time yesterday that the next person to hold up a scorecard in this House would be ejected from the House, and I request that you actually uphold that ruling, please, Mr Speaker.
No, I'm not going to do that because I didn't see it because I was focusing my attention on the Speaker at the time, and so I didn't pick that up. And that's order. And the presiding officer at the time makes those deliberations, and I'm certainly not asking someone to leave the House at 2 minutes to 12. Sue Maroney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, Mr Speaker, I can understand why you're fixated on the Speaker, because what I was saying was so important to New Zealanders, because they are paying through the nose every time they fill up their cars for that government's promises and that government's failure to actually achieve surplus through economic growth. And I know David Bennett thinks that it's funny. He thinks it's so funny that this government has sucked in the New Zealand public, that they have the New Zealand public paying for their surplus because they've failed to get economic growth. They're not going to reach surplus next year because of economic growth. They will reach surplus next year because they have hiked up petrol taxes for every New Zealander every time they pull into the service station. Yes, Mr Okenvold, all of your constituents are paying for your failure to actually get economic growth going in the West Coast. All of David Bennett's constituents are paying for his government's failure to lift economic growth in the Waikato, and I could name every single member's area because that's in fact the truth of the matter. New Zealanders don't want to be paying for this government's failure, but they have through the petrol pump, and farmers have paid for the failure of Simon Bridges to get this right. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, despite this side of the House giving them all the support that they could possibly give them, pointing it out to them time and time again. My colleague Marion Street doing absolutely the right thing, but the government failing at their job.
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. Order. This debate is interrupted and the House is suspended until 9 a.m. Good evening and good morning.